What if I told you that 12 of the most effective medicines on this planet have been sitting in plain sight for thousands of years, and the modern medical establishment has systematically looked the other way? Not because these herbs failed, not because something better came along, but because you can't charge $300 a month for something that grows in a garden. That's the uncomfortable truth nobody in a white coat wants to talk about. Ancient civilizations didn't have MRIs. They didn't have blood panels, but they had something modern medicine has largely abandoned. Thousands of years of direct observation, generation after generation, watching what healed people and what didn't, refining, testing, passing knowledge down with the kind of seriousness we now reserve for pharmaceutical trials. And the herbs they identified as medicine weren't guesses, they were conclusions. Conclusions that modern peer-reviewed research is now validating at a pace that should embarrass every doctor who ever dismissed plant medicine as folklore. Today I'm going to walk you through 12 of them, 12 herbs that ancient healers staked their reputations on, that mainstream medicine ignored or actively suppressed, and that clinical science is now proving work exactly as our ancestors said they did. Stick around because number 8 on this list was used by Roman gladiators to stop bleeding and fight infection on the arena floor, and surgeons are now studying it for the exact same purpose. And number 12, the final one, has been used for over 5,000 years across every continent. If you believe healing shouldn't be locked behind a prescription pad, hit that subscribe button right now. We post every week and we're just getting started. Let's get into it. Number 1, peppermint, the gut fixer hiding in plain sight. Peppermint, Mentha piperita, has been used medicinally for over 3,000 years. It appears in ancient Egyptian medical texts, in Greek and Roman pharmacology, and throughout traditional European herbalism. For centuries, it was one of the most commonly prescribed digestive medicines on Earth. Then modern gastroenterology arrived and replaced it with proton pump inhibitors, antacids, and antispasmodic drugs that came with side effect profiles longer than their benefits lists. Meanwhile, peppermint kept working. Clinical trials now show that peppermint oil capsules significantly reduce symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome, including abdominal pain, bloating, and irregular motility. The active compound menthol directly relaxes smooth muscle in the digestive tract through calcium channel blockade, the exact same mechanism used by some prescription antispasmodics. Studies show peppermint oil reduces the frequency and severity of tension headaches when applied topically. It opens airways and relieves sinus congestion. It has documented antimicrobial properties. Traditional use was peppermint tea after meals for digestive upset, peppermint oil rubbed on temples for headaches, and peppermint steam inhalation for respiratory congestion. Simple, cheap, effective. Peppermint got dismissed as a candy flavor, while the pharmaceutical industry built a multi-billion-dollar digestive drug market. Treating the same symptoms this herb has been fixing since the pharaohs. Number 2, ginger, the inflammation killer they tried to bury. Ginger, Zingiber officinale, has over 4,000 years of documented medical use across Chinese, Indian, Arabic, and Greek traditions. It was one of the most traded medicinal spices in the ancient world. And the clinical evidence behind it is now so overwhelming that ignoring it requires genuine effort. Ginger contains gingerols and shogaols, compounds that inhibit prostaglandin synthesis and reduce inflammatory cytokines through multiple pathways simultaneously. Clinical trials show ginger reduces nausea more effectively than placebo, and comparably to pharmaceutical antiemetics in post-surgical and chemotherapy patients. Studies demonstrate it reduces muscle pain and soreness, lowers inflammatory markers in osteoarthritis patients, and improves fasting blood sugar in type 2 diabetics. Research shows ginger inhibits COX-2, the same enzyme targeted by ibuprofen and celecoxib, but without the gastrointestinal damage those drugs cause. Traditional use included fresh ginger tea for nausea and digestive complaints, ginger poultices for joint pain, and dried ginger powder taken daily as a general anti-inflammatory tonic. Ginger didn't stop working. Doctors stopped prescribing it. There's a difference. Number 3, oregano, The antibiotic growing in your backyard. Most people think of oregano as pizza seasoning. Ancient Greek physicians thought of it as one of the most powerful antimicrobial medicines available. And the Greeks were right. Oreganum vulgare contains carvacrol and thymol, two phenolic compounds with broad-spectrum antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral, and antiparasitic properties. Laboratory studies show oregano oil is effective against a range of pathogenic bacteria, including strains resistant to conventional antibiotics. Research demonstrates it disrupts bacterial cell membranes in ways that make resistance development difficult. Clinical studies show oregano oil supplements reduce gut parasites, support healthy intestinal flora, and reduce symptoms of small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Traditional use included oregano tea for respiratory infections and sore throats, oregano oil applied topically for fungal skin conditions, and liberal culinary use as daily antimicrobial maintenance. The ancient Mediterranean diet wasn't just delicious, it was medicinal. Every herb in the blend was doing therapeutic work while people thought they were just eating lunch. Oregano got reduced to a dried flake in a shaker jar, while we developed synthetic antibiotics that bacteria learned to resist within decades. Meanwhile, oregano's antimicrobial compounds have been working for millennia, and bacteria still haven't figured them out. Number 4. Rosemary, the memory herb that neuroscience finally noticed. Rosemary, Rosmarinus officinalis, was sacred to ancient Greek scholars who wore rosemary garlands while studying because they believed it strengthened memory. Students placed sprigs on their desks during examinations. Mourners carried it at funerals to remember the dead. Shakespeare wrote, "Rosemary, that's for remembrance." For 2,000 years, the association between rosemary and memory was one of the most consistent observations in herbal medicine. And modern neuroscience just confirmed it's real. Rosemary contains carnosic acid, rosmarinic acid, and 1,8-cineol, compounds that have demonstrated neuroprotective and cognitive enhancing effects in clinical research. Studies show that even the aroma of rosemary essential oil improves memory performance, alertness, and processing speed. The compounds cross the blood-brain barrier and inhibit acetylcholinesterase, the enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter most critical for memory formation. This is the exact same mechanism used by pharmaceutical drugs prescribed for Alzheimer's disease. Rosemary also has potent antioxidant effects that protect neurons from oxidative damage, a primary driver of cognitive decline. Traditional use included rosemary tea for mental clarity, rosemary-infused oil for headaches, and fresh rosemary in cooking as daily cognitive maintenance. Greek scholars weren't being superstitious. They were doing something measurably effective. It took neuroscience 2,000 years to catch up to a student wearing flowers on his head. Number 5. Calendula, the wound healer that hospitals abandoned. Calendula officinalis, was one of the most widely used wound-healing herbs in medieval and Renaissance medicine. Military surgeons packed battlefield wounds with calendula poultices. Midwives used calendula preparations for postpartum healing. Herbalists prescribed it for ulcers, burns, and skin infections. Then antiseptic chemicals and antibiotic creams arrived, and calendula was dismissed as primitive. Except it wasn't primitive, it was effective. Modern studies show calendula extracts accelerate wound closure, increase collagen production at wound sites, stimulate angiogenesis, the growth of new blood vessels needed for tissue repair, and have genuine anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties. Clinical trials demonstrate calendula cream reduces the severity of radiation dermatitis in cancer patients undergoing radiation therapy. The flowers contain triterpenoids and flavonoids that modulate the inflammatory response at wound sites, reducing excessive inflammation while supporting the repair phase. Traditional use was a poultice of fresh calendula petals applied directly to wounds, burns, and skin irritations, or calendula-infused oil for chronic skin conditions. The bright orange flowers were grown in every monastery garden in Europe specifically for their medical utility. Calendula got abandoned, not because it failed, but because the medical profession decided that if it didn't come from a laboratory, it couldn't be real medicine. The wounds didn't get that memo. Number 6. Thyme, the respiratory savior. Thyme, Thymus vulgaris, has been used for respiratory infections since ancient Egypt, where it was part of the embalming process, specifically because of its antimicrobial power. Greek physicians prescribed thyme for chest congestion. Roman soldiers bathed in thyme water for vigor and respiratory health. Throughout the Middle Ages, thyme was the primary herbal treatment for coughs, bronchitis, and chest infections. Clinical research now confirms that thyme contains thymol and carvacrol alongside flavonoids that have genuine expectorant, antitussive, and bronchospasmolytic effects. Studies show thyme extract reduces coughing frequency in patients with acute bronchitis. It loosens mucus, relaxes bronchial smooth muscle, and fights the underlying infection simultaneously. In Germany, where herbal medicine maintained its medical legitimacy far longer than in most Western countries, thyme-based preparations are still approved and prescribed by physicians for respiratory conditions. Traditional use included thyme tea with honey for coughs and sore throats, thyme steam inhalation for congestion, and thyme-infused honey as a daily respiratory tonic during cold months. Thyme got replaced by cough suppressants that merely silence the symptom without addressing the infection or supporting the respiratory tract's own clearing mechanisms. Thyme works with your lungs. Pharmaceuticals work around them. Number 7. Echinacea, the immune commander. Echinacea was used by Native American healers for over 400 years before European contact. The Great Plains tribes used it more than any other plant for infections, wounds, snake bites, and pain. When European settlers learned of it, echinacea became one of the most popular medicines in America through the early 1900s. Then antibiotics arrived, and echinacea was abandoned almost overnight. But the clinical research that's accumulated since tells a story the medical establishment hasn't wanted to hear. Echinacea doesn't just stimulate the immune system generically, it modulates it. Studies show echinacea increases phagocytic activity of macrophages, enhances natural killer cell function, and increases circulating white blood cell counts. Meta-analyses of clinical trials show echinacea reduces the incidence of common colds and reduces their duration and severity when taken at onset. The plant contains alkamides, polysaccharides, and chicoraic acid that interact with cannabinoid receptors and immune cell signaling pathways in sophisticated ways that researchers are still mapping. Traditional Native American use included chewing the fresh root for throat infections, applying root poultices to wounds, and making decoctions for systemic infections. The knowledge was precise, specific, and effective. Echinacea got dismissed as folk medicine by the same medical establishment that later spent billions developing synthetic immunomodulatory drugs. The irony writes itself. Number 8. Yarrow, the gladiator's first aid. Here's the one I teased at the beginning. Yarrow, Achillea millefolium, is literally named after Achilles because according to Greek mythology, the warrior used it to treat his soldiers' wounds during the Trojan War. Roman gladiators carried yarrow as battlefield medicine. Medieval herbalists called it herba militaris, the military herb. It was the most important wound herb in the Western world for over 2,000 years. Modern research shows yarrow contains achillene, a compound with genuine hemostatic properties, meaning it helps stop bleeding. The plant also contains anti-inflammatory flavonoids, antimicrobial sesquiterpene lactones, and compounds that reduce pain at wound sites. Studies confirm yarrow extracts accelerate wound closure and have documented antibacterial activity. Traditional use was direct and urgent. Crushed fresh yarrow leaves pressed into bleeding wounds on the battlefield. Yarrow tea for internal bleeding, heavy menstruation, and digestive inflammation. Yarrow poultices for bruises and sprains. Military surgeons used this herb for centuries because in the chaos of combat, it worked immediately and it worked reliably. Yarrow disappeared from medicine when surgical techniques and synthetic hemostatic agents advanced. But the plant that stopped gladiators from bleeding to death on the arena floor still contains every compound that made it effective. Surgeons moved on. The chemistry didn't. Number 9. Mullein, the lung whisperer. Mullein, Verbascum thapsus, has been used for respiratory conditions across European, Asian, and Native American traditions for over 2,000 years. The large soft leaves were smoked, brewed as tea, or infused in oil for ear infections. And despite being one of the most consistently prescribed respiratory herbs in history, modern medicine acted as if it didn't exist. Recent research shows mullein contains saponins that act as natural expectorants, loosening and thinning mucus in the airways. The plant also has documented anti-inflammatory and antiviral properties. Mullein leaf tea coats and soothes inflamed mucous membranes throughout the respiratory tract, providing relief that's immediate and measurable. Traditional use included strong mullein tea for chronic coughs, asthma support, and bronchial congestion, and mullein flower oil dropped into the ear canal for ear infections. Studies on mullein flower oil show genuine analgesic and antimicrobial effects for otitis. Mullein grows wild across most of the northern hemisphere. It's literally a weed. One of the most effective respiratory herbs in human history grows in ditches and vacant lots, while people spend $30 on cough syrup that suppresses symptoms and calls it treatment. Number 10. Lemon balm, the viral shield. Lemon balm, Melissa officinalis, was described by Dioscorides in the 1st century AD as a treatment for anxiety, insomnia, and wounds. Paracelsus called it the elixir of life. For centuries, it was one of the most commonly grown medicinal herbs in European gardens. Modern research has uncovered something the ancients observed but couldn't explain. Lemon balm has potent antiviral properties, particularly against herpes simplex virus. Clinical trials show topical lemon balm extract significantly reduces healing time and symptom severity in cold sore outbreaks. The rosmarinic acid in lemon balm inhibits viral attachment to host cells. Studies also confirm lemon balm reduces anxiety and improves sleep quality without sedation, improves cognitive function, and has documented antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. Traditional use included lemon balm tea for nervous tension and insomnia, fresh leaf poultices for wounds and insect stings, and lemon balm tincture for digestive upset linked to stress. Lemon balm got dismissed as a pleasant garden herb, while antiviral pharmaceuticals with significant side effects became the standard of care for conditions this plant has been managing since the Roman Empire. Number 11. Dandelion, the liver tonic growing in your lawn. Dandelion, Taraxacum officinale, is the most aggressively eliminated plant in suburban America. People spend billions annually trying to kill it, and it's one of the most effective liver-supporting herbs ever documented in traditional medicine. Every traditional system that encountered dandelion, Chinese, Ayurvedic, European, Native American, used it specifically for liver and digestive support. Modern research confirms dandelion root stimulates bile production, which is the liver's primary method of eliminating processed toxins. It has documented hepatoprotective effects, reducing liver damage from toxic exposure in animal studies. The leaves are a potent natural diuretic that, unlike pharmaceutical diuretics, doesn't deplete potassium because the leaves themselves are rich in potassium. Studies show dandelion has anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and prebiotic properties supporting beneficial gut bacteria. Traditional use included dandelion root tea for liver support and digestive sluggishness, young dandelion greens eaten raw in salads for kidney support and mineral nutrition, and dandelion tincture for chronic inflammatory conditions. We poison the most effective liver herb in the Western herbal tradition because it ruins the appearance of our lawns. Let that sink in. Number 12. Ashwagandha, the ancient adaptogen that broke the research wide open. And here we are at the final one. The herb I saved for last, because the story of ashwagandha is the story of everything wrong with how modern medicine treats ancient knowledge, and everything right about what happens when real scientists finally take a serious look. Ashwagandha, Withenia somnifera, has been the single most important herb in Ayurvedic medicine for over 5,000 years. Its name means smell of the horse, referring to both the herb's distinct aroma and the traditional belief that it gives you the strength and vitality of a stallion. For millennia, it was prescribed for stress, fatigue, anxiety, insomnia, inflammation, immune weakness, cognitive decline, and reproductive health. Western medicine dismissed all of this as primitive superstition. Then the clinical trials started, and they haven't stopped. Studies show ashwagandha reduces serum cortisol levels by up to 30%. It significantly improves anxiety scores on validated clinical scales, performing comparably to pharmaceutical anxiolytics in some trials. Research demonstrates it improves sleep quality, increases muscle strength and recovery in resistance-trained adults, enhances cognitive function and memory, improves thyroid hormone levels in subclinical hypothyroidism, increases testosterone, and improves fertility markers in men, and reduces inflammatory markers, including C-reactive protein. The active compounds, withanolides, cross the blood-brain barrier and modulate GABA receptors, serotonin pathways, and the HPA axis simultaneously. This is the stress response system, the master control panel for how your body handles everything life throws at it. Modern psychiatry prescribes separate drugs for anxiety, insomnia, and depression, each with its own side effect profile, each creating its own dependency risk. Ashwagandha addresses the underlying dysregulation that produces all three, not by masking symptoms, by restoring the system that's supposed to prevent them. Traditional use was ashwagandha root powder simmered in warm milk before bed. That was the prescription for 5,000 years. And the clinical trials say it works. The most important herb in one of the world's oldest medical systems was ignored by Western medicine for the better part of a century, not because it was tested and failed, because it was never tested at all. Nobody bothered to look. And now that they're looking, the results are forcing a conversation that many in the medical establishment would rather not have. These herbs work. They've always worked. And the only thing that changed was that we stopped asking them to. If you made it to the end of this video, you now know 12 herbs that survived the test of time, survived the rise of pharmaceutical dominance, and survived decades of deliberate dismissal. And they're all still here, still growing, still available, still working. So here's what I want you to do. Smash that like button. If this video changed the way you think about what real medicine looks like, drop a comment and tell me which herb surprised you most. See you in the next one.